And now to these Redbirds, Jim, I'm going to kind of chuckle as I say this because just for months, we're saying, okay, they're in it, probably not going to make the playoffs. And I don't think you can say that anymore. You can't, if your take is definitively the Cardinals aren't going to make the playoffs, I don't think you can have that take right now. Because when you're one game out with, 20 to go, and you look at how the schedules line up, again, I'm not saying they're going to, but right now, and I'm going to read the schedules off to you guys. I want your opinion on the weekend first, both of you. But the Cardinals are one game out with 20 to play. I mean, you can say, okay, they're 3.5. When you get to one game, I don't care what the records are of the Padres, the Reds, how they've played. And we all know the second wild card, it is what it is. You're probably going to line up against the Max Scherzer potentially or the Giants. You're not going to be the favorite, but it's still one game. And right now, with 20 games to go, the Cardinals have a very, very, very good chance to take that second wild card.
Well, especially if Nolan Arenado keeps doing what he's doing right now. I mean, getting hot at the right time. That's what, I mean, how many times have we heard that? Schultz say that, everybody say that. You got to get hot
Doug
at
Vaughn.
the right
If we just get hot, we can win this baby.
Exactly. And, it was just very interesting to see Nolan Arenado go from, I don't know what's wrong with me, in that post game on Friday, was that Friday night after they lost, where he was just like down and out, where he's just like, I'm disappointed in myself. I don't know what the answer is. And then just literally the next day, back-to-back games, just looks like a superstar again, which is exactly what you need. That's the whole reason he came here. And we've been waiting for, he's been in a little bit of a lull and then finally performing like that superstar once again at, honestly, the right time for the Cardinals.
And that's where Nolan Arenado, even before he said that, I think it's fair to say, offensively, you did expect a little more. Now, this is an .881 career OPS guy, but we also knew, even though I think the whole narrative of, he can't hit it, he can't hit anywhere but Coors, did anybody really think that? Did anybody that really watches baseball? Again, I think okay, he won't necessarily be a 900 OPS, okay, but can he be 850, whatever it is? And it's funny to me that this past weekend, he was basically saying, I'm not having a good year. And his OPS is 811. He's slugging 502. I understand he wishes his on-base was higher. It's only 309. He's a career 345 on base. But in a quote-unquote bad or down year, he's got 31 bombs and 96 RBI, which is funny because Miles Michaelis basically said that in his press conference. He goes, that dude's in there ticked off, and he's going to have 30 bombs and 100 RBIs. So, again, if that's a down year, I think Cardinal fans are okay with that. I'm not saying he couldn't be a little better over the course of the whole 140 games, but his numbers are right there, Jim.
Absolutely they are. Look, I just love the emotion over the weekend from him was unbelievable, wasn't it? I mean, you get pumped up as a fan. You go, dude, look at that. He's ready to go. Now we're ready to go. Home run. I mean, I don't know what the heck David Bell was thinking by pitching to him, but I just went, thank you. Thank you for the mistake. We'll take it. And then, he's just been awesome. And I will say, hey, I didn't think they were going to get this close. We said it all summer. I said, Charlie, they won't get to it any closer than 2.5. And they have. And they're a game out. So much to play for still in front of them. But as Brooke just brought up, I mean, watching them and watching Arenado do his thing, you go, okay, I'm in. Let's see.
Looking good.
Let's just ride it out and see what happens.
Okay, so here's how it lines up with the National League wild card. And I laugh every time I look at the wild card standings. It's usually the Dodgers there, although for a second the Dodgers did pass the Giants. But right now, Dodgers are in the first wild card. The Dodgers are 16 games better. 16 games better than the Reds and the Padres, which, again, we all know the system. You can only play the rules you're given. I still think, even if the Cardinals make it, I feel like it's kind of unfair that the Cardinals, Reds, or Padres would even have a chance to beat a Dodgers team that is 16 games better than them in a one-game playoff. And I'm just telling you, if it's Max Scherzer versus Adam Wainwright, the Cardinals in the 2010s with that Cardinals devil magic, they would win that game. I'm telling you. Like, just weirdly somehow, they will find a way to beat Max Scherzer. Like, I'm just telling you, stuff like that happens all the time with the Cardinals. Even in a crazy year like this, even though we know the Dodgers overall are better, the Cardinals, they split with them. But doesn't it feel very Cardinals-esque if they were to get to that game and they were 17 games worse than the Dodgers and they were somehow able to win a 9-inning wild card game? I'm telling you, that wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Well, and also, too, you're kind of getting to the point, too, where we're getting some more pieces back together. Dakota Hudson possibly coming back, Jack Flaherty coming back. I know that they'll be in a limited capacity and working out of the bullpen, but still, it seems like things are aligning in a way where maybe that could be possible. Maybe, and things are really working out for the Cardinals where they're starting to get some pieces back and possibly, I think you would need some of that double magic, but I don't know, the Dodgers, maybe it's something about, you are overlooking the Cardinals a little too much. We see it happen all the time in sports, right? Where it's like there's obviously an advantage, for a certain team going in there, but then all of a sudden, the underdog surprises them.
And I think, too, in a wild card 1-game setting, to me, it's more about 1-game, 9-inning weird variance, right? All of that stuff usually evens out over 162. If you're better, it's going to show over 162 because usually if you hit the ball hard consistently, you'll have some batted ball luck early, but that usually evens out over the course of a long season, right? If the Dodgers are 17 or 18 games better than the Cardinals, which they may be when the season ends, that doesn't matter for 1 game because we just saw the Cardinals did beat the Dodgers 2 times out of 4. And all they'd have to do is win 1 out of 1. So I'm not going to say it's going to happen. It's just funny to me when I look at the standings because the Dodgers are now 16 games better than Cincinnati. You have Cincinnati and San Diego. They're basically tied with the same winning percentage of .521. So the Cardinals are 1 game back. Philadelphia, Phillies, 2.5 games back. And the Mets, I want to talk about that Sunday Night Baseball game as well. The Mets are in it. Look, the Mets are 3 games back, and they obviously play the Cardinals starting tonight. You have a matchup of 2 over 40-year-olds, which is pretty sweet, with Adam Wainwright, 40-year-old Adam Wainwright taking on 41-year-old Rich Hill. But I want your guys' take on this part, which is we've talked a lot about the schedule, what these teams have remaining. But now that we are about 20 games to go for all these teams, when you look at what the Padres have left, let me read this to you. Okay, Padres have 4 with the Giants, 3 with the Cardinals, 3 with the Giants, 3 with the Braves, 3 with the Dodgers, and they finished 3 with the Giants. That is an unbelievably difficult schedule. Every single team they're playing, either San Francisco and L.A., 2 of the best teams, the 2 best teams in the National League, Atlanta, they're going to win the NL East. The Cardinals could get the second wild card. That schedule is ridiculously tough for a Padres team that, Jim, 2 months ago we said, the Cardinals are 10 games back of the Padres. The Padres are not going to cough up that lead. They had all the pitching injuries, and then lately one of their guys that was finally pitching well, Blake Snell, throws 11 pitches last night and is yanked from that game. So who knows if he's going to pitch his next start, which was scheduled to be against the Cardinals this upcoming weekend.
They are sitting pretty compared to, with the exception of Phillies, but the Phillies aren't playing well. Going into the weekend, the Phillies had blown 30 saves, which, think about that. If they just win half those games, they've got the second wild card sewn up at this point. They're challenging the Dodgers for a home field advantage. That's not the case. You like your chances. Tonight with the Mets, you wouldn't have thought that this would be that big of a series, but it actually is. The Mets got a little more life. You mentioned last night they come away with the win over the Yankees. The Yankees are just spiraling out of control. They woke up this morning out of the playoffs. It's hard to believe after a 13-game winning streak, about 2.5 weeks ago. So, but you like your chances with the Cardinals, man. I'm a believer in the opportunity. I'm not sold that hey, they're gonna run with this thing because there's a lot of games with Milwaukee for St. Louis.
100%. And I'm going to get to that schedule part for the Reds and the Cardinals right now. So, look, I'm not totally writing off the Padres, but based on the schedule, I am. That's a ridiculously difficult schedule. They don't even have a 500 team. Well, okay, the Cardinals are technically right there, but everybody else, you're playing elite baseball teams, the best in the National League. Okay, go to the Reds. The Reds have Pittsburgh. They stink. Dodgers. We know they're good. Pittsburgh again. They stink. Washington Nationals. They stink. Chicago White Sox, 2 games. Pretty dang good, we know. They finish with 3 more against Pittsburgh. So they have 9 games, the Reds do. The Cincinnati Reds have 9 games left versus the Pirates, and they have 4 versus the terrible Washington Nationals that traded everybody at the deadline. Okay, so go to the Cardinals now. And I promise I'll be done here. But I do think this is pretty interesting, and it matters for these last 20 games. Cardinals have Mets, Padres, Brewers, so a really tough next 10 games. And then they have 4 versus the Cubs, 3 versus the Brewers, and 3 more versus the Cubs. So when I just laid out those schedules, the Padres have a ridiculously difficult schedule. The Reds have the easiest schedule. The Cardinals are in the middle. They have a bunch of tough games, but you also, Brooke, have 7 games left versus the Chicago Cubs. So to me, it's going to come down to the Cardinals and the Reds.
I can see that. And, well, here's another thing, too. You say the Pirates stink, but then say that to the Cardinals 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing about the Pirates is they're just kind of pesky at this point. They just like getting in the way, I feel like. So I know that theoretically you look at that and you say, yeah, those are easy wins, but, you know, we thought that too not too long ago for the Cardinals as well. Sometimes they tend to surprise you. They have some guys, as Schulte said, they have some sneaky good guys on that team. So you can't really count them out in a lot of ways. Remember when he said that?
Well, you have Yoshi. Yoshi's been amazing for a month now. And Brian Reynolds is a really good player. Yoshi, I don't know what happened if a Cardinals fan did something to that man back in the day, but he just punished the Cardinals.
I mean, just like he was a Cardinals killer. I mean, just out of nowhere, just came out and absolutely crushed him. So that's what I'm saying is they have some sneaky good talent, as Schulte liked to say. But theoretically, yeah, you look at that on paper and say, all right, yeah, the Cardinals have a chance to run away with this, but can they is the thing. Can they stay consistent? That's the story that I feel like we keep going over and over again with them is, can their bullpen stay consistent? Can their offense stay consistent? Those are going to be the questions moving forward.
Right, and clearly, now we can talk about a lot of guys who have been really good. TJ McFarland, Luis Garcia has been a freaking godsend. How did that guy not find a job in the major leagues? He's unbelievable. You want him back next year. But clearly, they've righted the ship with the 9th. Alex Reyes, it was getting to a point where it was untenable, him as the closer. And I know that shifts everything around because Gio was the jam guy. We'll get you out of a jam. We'll go 1 1/3. And Genesis Cabrera was your lefty, and he can go multiple innings. That obviously shifts the deck. It shuffles the deck a little bit. But Gio Gallegos now as the closer, you feel a lot better about that situation right there. And Jim, for the whole year, what we asked of the Cardinals was this. When they were, and even though there were a couple series against the Pirates and the Tigers, we said, what the hell's going on? But when they were beating up on the Pirates and some other teams like that, we said, we need you to prove it by beating the good teams, by winning some series or splitting with the Dodgers. And what did they do the last 10? Remember, so they go 5-5. Mm-hmm. They go 5-5, which I think is impressive, versus Brewers, Dodgers, Reds. And by the way, one of those, the finale against the Brewers, was one of those epic, there's been about 5 of them, but that was one of those epic Alex Reyes bullpen games, Gio Gallegos bullpen games, where the Cardinals were very close to going 6-4 versus a ridiculously tough stretch.
They have weathered some big storms. I go back to something you were talking about earlier. Sometimes all it takes is a moment or two. You know, you were talking about possible moments that could happen if the Cardinals match up with the Dodgers. It could be the same situation. To your point, they should have taken 2 out of 3 against the Brewers. I didn't think they would split with the Dodgers after losing the first 2, but they found ways. One day it's Adam Wainwright. The next night it's another guy. I mean, Lester's been very good at times for this team. Jay Happ came up big yesterday after failing miserably twice. You went, yeah, if he can't pitch, then, you know, you don't have, well, what does he do yesterday? He keeps you in the game, you win the game. They're close enough now. Every game's going to matter. Every at-bat matters, and they have as good a shot as anybody because they do have some veterans that have been through this.
And after a really rough start, it's fair to say John Lester has been much better than we expected. Now, J-Happ started really good, then had a couple really bad games, and came back yesterday and was very good again. But I do think overall, those guys, they've given the Cardinals what the front office wanted and maybe even a bit more. Because for the most part, they're not Max Scherzer. They're not going 8 innings. Now, Lester gave you 7 the other day. But they're giving you a chance to win. And I do think it's fair to say that what the Cardinals needed at the break, even though, look, the Cardinals, they're not elite. They're only 4 games over. We all get it. They're only in this because they created the second wild card. We understand, but that's the rules. And as long as the Cardinals have a chance to make the playoffs, it's still pretty dang interesting. When you have J-Happ and John Lester, they're giving you opportunities to win, where at the end there, when you're rolling in Jake Woodford and Oviedo and towards the end with John Gant, those guys were at 94 pitches through 4 1/3, and they weren't giving you opportunities to win. So at the minimum, Happ and Lester, and nobody's saying that they're the saviors of the world, but they're giving you a chance to have an opportunity to win a game in the 8th and the 9th inning, and lately the Cardinals are pulling some of those out because their bullpen has been better as well.
Well, go back to what Jim just said. These are guys who have weathered through a lot of storms. And I was a little cynical whenever the front office picked them up. I was like, okay, you're going to get some guys who are over 35 and nobody really even wants them. Really? We're going to pick up these guys? But honestly, it kind of shows Oviedo was not ready. We know that. Woodford, a little bit better here as of late, but he still needed some more time in the minors. And so it actually, honestly, it looks great because you got some guys in there who are battle tested, who've been through a lot throughout their careers, and now it's paying off for the Cardinals because you just need some type of consistency when it comes to the starting rotation. And at least these guys, John Lester finally picking up here, looks amazing as of late.
That's Brooke Grimsley. We've got Jim Heuer, Charlie Marlow here on 590 The Fan, 590thefan.com. Get your texts in, get your takes on the Cardinals. Also, Mizzou football we're going to be talking about on the other side of the break, 855-282-8255. Driver Rob texting in and says, I immediately thought of Pete Kozma hitting Kershaw when Charlie said Cardinals Devil Magic of the 2010s. Now, the Kozma hit, though, the big one was against the Nationals, right? Did he have a big one against Kershaw as well? I know Matt Adams, obviously. Matt Carpenter had the great at-bat in L.A.
I remember Grichuk hitting a bomb off of Kershaw in this first inning and batting second one day. The Kozma thing was against the Nationals. And
that was 2012.
Yeah. And don't forget the infield fly rule against the Braves.
I was there for that.
That's the kind of stuff that happens where you go, you can't plan that. Well, let's face it. If it was Kershaw, it'll be Scherzer. If it was Scherzer and Waino, well, Waino just beat them last week, remember? He shut them down, okay? The other thing is there was a year the Cardinals beat Roy Halladay. Carpenter was as good as I've ever seen any Cardinal pitcher on a game day, and a Game 5 against a Phillies team that won, 103? Whatever it was. They were the team to beat. And the Cardinals beat them in a 5-game series. There's just so many moments like that can happen. Heck, the Cardinals put up 2 years ago 10 runs in the first inning against Atlanta. That never happens. All it takes is one. All it takes is one.
The funny thing, as you mentioned all those, and I'm saying this very luckily, I was able to be at almost every single one of those games.
Yeah.
Because, look, the last 5 years, could it be worse? Of course. Could you be in last place? Sure. The Cardinals have been in the playoffs a little bit in 2019. They made it to the NLCS. They got swept by the Nats. You got in with the weirdness of last year with COVID. But we also, and I'm not trying to give the front office any type of pass, but when you mention those moments, you sometimes forget how amazing 2011 to 2015 was freaking amazing. Because off the top of your head, Jim, you just mentioned 5 incredible moments of the Cardinals when they weren't supposed to beat. We're talking slaying Giants, although, pun not intended, the one team they couldn't beat was the San Francisco Giants.
Right.
But everybody else, Kershaw, those Phillies teams, the Nationals, so many times the Cardinals were not supposed to win those series. I mean, the Cardinals owned the Dodgers in that time frame when the Dodgers were just as good as the Cardinals in the regular season. Now, it just happened that the Giants owned the Cardinals, but that's the way it went for about 5 years.
Absolutely true. I mean, all those things, we didn't even mention David Freese's game against the Rangers, because there's so many of those moments that you just had an unexpected hero, and anything is possible.
Did you guys watch or hear about it if you didn't watch Sunday Night Baseball, which I don't usually watch Sunday Night Baseball because Sunday night has become more kind of family time. You're watching your HBO shows and your Billions and all that on Showtime. But for years, I would always watch Sunday Night Baseball. And I just happened to watch last night, kind of for fantasy baseball reasons. But then I'm watching the game.
Tell the truth why.
No, I lost.
Okay.
I lost because my opponent had Francisco Lindor and Stanton, who hit a combined 4 home runs in one game. So if you're watching that game, Lindor hits a home run, and Lindor's had a bad season. He hits his first homer, okay? Then he hits another one, and he does some gesture, which I was like, what is he doing? Well, after I watched the postgame, he was whistling because he's saying that the Yankees are stealing signs. They're whistling either pitch location, whatever it is. And he was really aggressive about it, looking at the Yankees, looking at the dugout. So what happens? Giancarlo Stanton, who's a freaking defensive end, then hits a freaking missile, rounds the bases, stops midway through second base and third base, turns around, and you could see him mouthing, "You shouldn't be talking S. You shouldn't be talking S," to Francisco Lindor. So the bench is clear. It was really interesting. And then what happens after that? Lindor hits a freaking another home run. This guy has not even had a good year. He hits 3 home runs. He's a little guy, and he flexes his bicep as he's going around. Now, he didn't go crazy. He did a flex, but then after all the craziness, he kind of just rounded the bases. And then the fitting ending is Giancarlo Stanton is up at the end of the game and hits a little pop-up to Lindor to end the game. It was an incredible Sunday Night Baseball game, and I mentioned this, if you're watching it, it was really good, but also you wonder, emotionally, if you're a Mets player, Mets fan, there's got to be quite the letdown entering this Cardinals series. Last night, bench is clearing. New York versus New York on the 20th anniversary weekend of 9/11. I would just think from an emotional standpoint, the Mets, they may have emptied the tank. I'm not saying they're going to lose today, but the Cardinals rolling into town is a different story than what we saw over the weekend.
I hope you're right. That would be awesome.
Be great.
Right? Oh, Cardinals scored 11 runs. That's terrible, isn't it?
Or it goes the other way, where then they just build off of that momentum.
Yeah,
that's true.
Speak.
I'm trying to be positive here for Cardinals Nation. Okay, after all year long, I said they're not going to make the playoffs. I have to now 100% admit, with 20 games to go, that there's a very good chance they make that second wild card spot. Also,
can I just say that in baseball, brawls are always really funny to me, because my favorite part is just like people coming out and just kind of standing there too. You know, like you'll have guys come out from
everybody
like the
runs
bullpen.
And stops.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, what
Hold
was
me
the
back.
point?
Hold me back. I don't really want to fight.
Yeah.
By the way, if you watched that, the greatest gesture and all of that, which you knew somebody had to do it, because just 2 weeks ago, we're all destroying the Mets. Javier Baez and Francisco Lindor. I thought it was hilarious, but they're doing thumbs down to boo their own fans, which is so hilarious. It's just great. I know it's stupid, but it's so funny that when it happens, I'm like, that's the greatest thing ever. Then they get destroyed for it. So during that brawl, or it wasn't a brawl, those guys standing around not punching each other. But Brett Gardner just looked at Lindor and Baez and just did a very aggressive thumbs down, which I thought was hilarious.
That's amazing. You see, that's hilarious.
That's the way it should be done.
Hammer on the text line saying Frank Jr. is at it again. I'm now Frank Jr. Am I now a homer? Am I a homer? Jim Heuer.
I don't think you're being a homer. You're just saying
all
the
year,
reality is that there's an opportunity there.
All year long, I've never thought the Cardinals were going to get the second wild card. We're now at a point where if you said that, you don't understand math and the schedule. I'm sorry, right? I'm not saying they're going to make it, but for you to say now that they're not, they have a good chance. The Padres are in a free fall. They have the hardest schedule left by far of any of these teams. They just lost Blake Snell. Who knows if it's going to be serious? The Reds and the Cardinals are going to be going at it for the last 20 games, and the Cardinals' schedule lines up where they absolutely have a chance.
Now, Charlie, what if the Cardinals need you to be cynical and doubt them because that's what's been motivating them? What if you jinx this?
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, I'll be getting back to being negative tomorrow, okay? In the meantime, though.
Thumbs down, Charlie.
Thumbs down, Marlow. I love it. I'm getting called Frank Jr., and that's not even a rip because I love Frank Cusimano, okay? I take that now as
Frankie.
As a term of endearment, yeah.
Frank was everywhere also, by the way, at Norwood Hills Country Club. Does that man sleep? I just have to seriously ask you guys, does that man sleep? Is he a vampire? Because he's everywhere.
He's
all
a
the time.
And he loves golf.
Oh,
he was into it this past weekend. Good for Frank. I love Frank.